Now let's take a look at the different kinds of fields that we can use. There are 6 in here. The top 3 are the most common. So let's just go down the list and see what we're working with. So I just added a text field. Now before I get into any details of the field, let's look here at this blue box called text 0. What the system does is stack layers. If you're familiar with Photoshop or scrapbooking, then you understand what we're talking about. You're stacking things on top of each other. If you have something that you want to be in the background, then you want it on the bottom. If you have something that you want on the top, you make it on the top. There'll be some strategies into positioning these that we'll talk about later, especially when it comes time to customize your content. So now let's go over here and we'll look at the details section for whichever field is highlighted. So let's start at the top. This is a field type text. Let's name it. So the name that I type in here shows here, and that's important in case you need to rearrange or quickly find a layer or field to edit. Here we have the width and the height of this zone. Now for text, media, basically any field type, the zone will control the maximum size of the contents. Think of it as like a container, and that nothing you put in the container can exceed the size of it. So for text, that means if I've got a container that's, let's make this smaller real quick, that's 1 inch by 1 inch, and I start typing something really long, like congratulations to you, way to go, it's going to shrink in order to fit into whatever measurements I've given it. So if I want to, so that's where we're at, or that's something to consider when you're setting your width and your height. So let's say I wanted to make the headline of a certificate. Well, I might want that to take up almost all of the 8.5 by 11 landscape-oriented page. So I might make it 10 inches wide, and then this is the height. And you can see that 1 inch is plenty big for what I'm talking about here. But if I were to change this to, say, honor roll, and if I were to make it bigger, then that 1 inch is about right. Now if I lower this, say 0.5, then that's going to decrease the size of the container and force the text to shrink. So let's keep this one big, just for now. So that was width and height of your container. Next we have X and Y. That is the position of the top left of the container. So let's say I wanted to center this perfectly. Well, when I have the field highlighted, it's got a line on it, so I can tell it's about center just by looking at it. But if I wanted to make it exactly center, then I could put it into a 1/2 inch. Now it's centered because my 10-inch container starts a 1/2 inch. That means there's a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch there. And let's say that I wanted to make it a nice even 1/2 inch from the top. I can do that. I can also drag things around and it'll change the X and the Y position. So let's call it 0.5 and 0.5. Opacity is how transparent something is. So if it's 100% opaque, that means it's all the way physical and you cannot see through it. But let's say that you wanted to make something faint. This might pertain to a watermark or something you wanted to keep subtle. Then you can change the opacity. So here's what happens if I make it 25% opaque. Then you can see what happens there. So increase opacity and the more visible it gets. Rotation, this will allow me to put things sideways. So I'm changing the rotation. If you want to jump to a position, you can do that here. So if I wanted it at 90 degrees, if I wanted it upside down at 180 degrees, then I can change the rotation. And that's true of shapes, images,